Welcome to the IBEX Training podcast. I'm Kristi, and I'm here with my co-host and also my husband, Patrick. And today we're going to talk about some eating habits and cycles that we've navigated throughout our journey, some things that have worked for us and that have also helped for others, and then also provide some practical tips that we think can make a big impactful change, helping you reach your goals when it comes to nutrition and just making some smaller changes. So let's get started. How you doing, Patrick?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm feeling pretty good. Taper's here, and it's always hard, but it's good. And I'm ready for it. I've put the work in, but it's kind of funny. I see you out working hard and I get that little bit of itch like, ooh, I'm ready to work hard. But that's only because the volume and intensity is slightly decreasing. And it's interesting when that starts to happen, how much almost like back to life you start to come, but how you don't want to be patient for the race to get here. And yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I've recognized that year after year with all of the things that I've done with competing at the CrossFit Games, now training for races. And it's just part of it.
You are very goal driven and you enjoy having a goal, but you seem to enjoy the training much more than you do the actual objective. So, whether it's the CrossFit Games or this race, like the training seems to be where you get all your satisfaction. Once the competition or race comes around, it's kind of, you could take it or leave it a little bit.
Yeah, I do. I love all the little things that come along with it. I love showing up when you don't really feel like it. I love learning about yourself. I just think it's such a challenge. And I love those days that they're the hard ones. And I also love the process of the fueling and the recovery, which we're here to talk to today about nutrition, which I'm really excited about, and kind of what we've learned. So I've competed at the highest level. You've also competed. We've coached many challenges and helped many people in our gym with their nutrition. And then also we've had life shifts and changes as we continue to, take on this journey together. And that's what we're here to talk to you about today. We're both in different spots right now. So I'm, again, training for another race. Just seems to be something that I love to do. But kind of looking back at my journey and how it's evolved is I started extremely underfueled. I didn't understand fuel. I would, wait very long periods between my meals, and then I'd get really, really hungry, and then I'd eat a huge meal, and then I wouldn't eat as much. So it's just like a little bit of that disordered eating and trying to understand how to actually fuel your body for performance. And that's ultimately what led me down the road to be so passionate about nutrition. And then learning to fuel for performance and understanding what it actually feels like to be able to perform because you are fueled. And I don't think people often understand that. And so I think just this entire journey has just been so eye-opening, and I'm excited to share and then continue learning more. And I know your journey has been similar, but also in a different way.
Yeah. And it's been a lot of years since I've had any real interest in competing, but the day-to-day of either my activity level, whether that's being training to compete or coaching on our feet all day, being at the gym, to now spending much more time behind a computer, building and running a business. There's less time on my feet, less on the go. And I find myself being more strategic about my goals, where I want to be fit, but it's much more of a priority to, basically be fit, but be lean and build muscle. It's like, that's, more goal, closer to kind of match my goals now than being at the top end of what my performance could be.
And I would say that's a conversation that we have on repeat with a lot of people at the gym, especially people who are our age who, maybe they were in that D1 college athletics, or maybe they were an athlete their whole life. And now they have a job and they work often. They work a lot. They have kids, they have relationships, they have family. They still want to have time to work out. And then it's like, oh my gosh, now you're asking me to weigh, measure, count everything on top of that. Like, that just doesn't seem possible. And then it kind of spirals and can become a cycle at times.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that we've done tons of, diet challenges and helped hundreds and hundreds of people with these types of pieces of advice. And the simpler you can keep it, the easier. But it does need to be measurable and trackable in some way. And there's different ways you can go about doing that. But you can't just guess, and just rolling the dice and kind of hoping you're doing it correctly is not going to get you where you want to go. And that goes for the top end of performance. And that also goes for just losing weight or leaning out.
Yeah, I think looking at the top end of performance, something that I was really hesitant to do. And I didn't want to completely commit at first. And then once I did, it actually changed my life for the performance aspect, not my everyday life. And it's being able to pull myself out of that performance aspect to understand I'm in everyday life and I need to enjoy life. And there's a better way, an easier, less stress way to do this. But in that performance, when I'm trying to dial in that top 1%, something that did make a big difference for me was weighing and measuring my food. And that was using a food scale to understand how much I was eating per meal. And it wasn't for me to cut weight or to watch how much I was eating, but instead it was actually because I needed to be eating enough. And I think that until I started weighing and measuring, and we'll talk about different ways that you can weigh and measure because not everybody wants to use a food scale mentally, or they just don't have time, and that's totally fine. But I think it's understanding what is your meal made up of and how to understand what you should be putting into your body. And so for me, when I finally was like, wow, that cup equals this, or I thought I was eating so much protein and I only had 10 grams of protein in that meal. If I only have 10 grams of protein, like how are my muscles going to recover and rebuild, and how am I going to get stronger? Like that's not possible.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because on both ends of the spectrum, you can kind of, peel the orange. And for you, you're a smaller athlete that needed a ton of calories to keep up with the amount of training that you were doing, and you were trying to get bigger and stronger. So the amount of calories that you had to eat was literally like challenging for you to be able to consume enough. So it's like you kind of have to be creative to find ways to get enough calories in. And for somebody else who's maybe trying to lose weight, you're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum where it's the same problem, but it's a reverse where you're trying to restrict your calories, but you do want to get enough food in to where you're actually feeling full and you're not starving. So they're different approaches, but they both need to be approached kind of strategically to where one, it's sustainable, and two, you can actually work towards your goals.
I think that just means that you have to evaluate, first of all, what are your goals? So I think that's the number one question people need to ask, because fueling needs to support your goals. So I was fueling as if I was going to be an aesthetic athlete. And aesthetics, like that looks really great. But when I was training for the CrossFit Games, I wanted to perform. I needed to be able to run fast, run far, lift heavy, do multiple events in the day. And if I was performing just, in the back of my head, it wasn't to look good. It's just like if I looked at how I was fueling, that's ultimately what it was. I was just under eating. So counting helped me understand how much to eat to be able to perform. So I think step number one is you have to ask yourself what your goals are.
Well, and also it wasn't necessarily that you were just under eating, and there was maybe a point where you were, but it was just learning that you felt like you were eating everything you possibly could, but that just still wasn't enough.
100%.
So it had to be dialed in much more in order to, figure out how we could get those calories in, and it needed to be weighed and measured and tracked daily. Because if you weren't eating enough, it just turns into a vicious cycle. And, that also kind of like we were talking about, it goes the opposite way, for people who are either trying to lose weight or just stay maybe where they're at.
And I think that second piece, the latter, for people trying to lose weight or maybe maintain or just kind of body recomp, is a lot of the conversations that we were having and some of the cycles that we were seeing with people in the gym. And it's super easy to fall victim to this kind of cycle where it's like, hey, I wake up, I'm not really that hungry, so I'm going to push my breakfast back a little bit. And then I get really into my work. Now I've skipped lunch because I'm super busy at work. And then it's like, oh, but I wanted to work out after work. So I go into the gym and now my energy is kind of drained, and my workout kind of suffers because I was hesitant to eat because I didn't want to feel fueled during my workout, but now I don't have that energy during my workout. Then I get home and I have a good dinner, I'm eating good foods, but it's like, man, I just want to snack all night. Or I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm hungry. So then because it's like, wow, I can't sleep unless I go downstairs and eat. So I have the snack in the middle of the night. Well, here we go. We start again. Now I'm not hungry when I wake up first thing in the morning. And I think this is a vicious cycle that a lot of people can fall into without even recognizing it or understanding what's happening. And then how it can really shift and change, the energy that they have for their work, the energy they have for their families, the energy they have for their workouts.
I think for like myself and most people, the weighing and measuring isn't the most enjoyable. And I think for some people, it's even just daunting. For me, it's just kind of the time commitment, and my mind is in other places. I don't want to weigh and measure, but there are other ways to do it. And what we're always trying to get people to do is to do something that's sustainable. If you weigh and measure your food for 6 weeks, but your life is miserable and it's not something you're going to maintain, you're probably going to revert back to your old habits anyway. So sometimes it's using like fist portions or measuring through predetermined like plastic containers where it's like your meat goes in this section, carbs go here, and something that makes it very easy to where there's not really an excuse not to do it. And falling off is a less likely thing to happen. For me, I don't weigh and measure, but I know what I'm eating every day. And I just eat the same thing literally every day. It makes it very easy. And I want easy more than I want variety. We can still kind of mix up the food a little bit, but I know that instead of measuring, I just know it's maybe 1 cup of beef. That's what I'm having for this meal. So I don't have to get out the measuring or the scale and weigh. I just know a cup of beef. That's no different than what you would be doing anyway. You just are getting the correct amount.
You do eat the same thing every single day. And I guess I do too. It makes grocery shopping really easy. We know what we want, but we do shift and change. But like for you, I think you even have similar meal times. And I think that there's a huge benefit to that because I think your body knows when that food is coming and it keeps your metabolism going.
And I think it's funny because I think a lot of people like that sounds just like miserable to eat the same thing every day. But, if you're eating, 4 or 5 meals a day, it's been, 4 or 5 meals since the last time you ate that meal. And it just makes things easy. And like throughout, I'm not eating the same meal every day. There's chicken, beef, steak, ground beef, ground turkey, salmon, there's a lot of different varieties of the type food that we're eating that are spread out throughout the day. Sometimes it's white rice, sometimes it's sweet potatoes with one meal, and maybe we'll change that every few months, but just keep it simple. And what is not simple and sustainable is eating a totally different meal every single day. One, it makes grocery shopping too hard. Two, now you're reweighing and measuring everything, and you don't even necessarily get like the best like eyeballs or gauge of what you're eating because it's completely different every day. So it's just making it harder for you to even track and keep yourself accountable to the things that you are eating.
That same principle goes along with consistency, right? So consistency in the gym. So you have consistency with the foods that you're eating. And oftentimes for us, it's like we build our meals around protein. So the first thing that you should be doing is looking at your plate and recognizing like, do I have a cup of protein? Do I have a palm size of protein? Can I look at my plate and recognize that there's at least 25% of that plate that is protein? Can I name my protein on the plate? And a lot of times that's where we start with people. It's like, first, what's your goal? Are you, training to look good, to feel good, to have energy? Are you training for a specific race? Are you training for a competition? Like, how do we fuel to meet that goal? Then from there, starting with protein, because oftentimes, no matter who you are, people are under eating protein. And as we get older, we actually can lose muscle. So having enough protein is going to help us with that muscle mass. So as we age, we don't lose the muscle.
If you're not tracking your food in any way, we're always trying to get people to kind of take baby steps to work their way in. And that goes for fitness, and that also goes for nutrition. And I think it may be a little bit easier to kind of wrap your head around for most of us that do go to the gym. If you haven't been in a while, you don't show up and go hard every single day for 7 days. You're probably not going to feel that great. You kind of got to build your way back in. Consistency is going to be the key, and building momentum that's going to be maintainable. If you come back in, you go hard for 2 weeks and then you're destroyed, you're tired, and you kind of go back to your old habits, that's not very helpful. So the same thing applies for food, where it's like maybe the first starting point is like there's probably something you're eating on a daily basis that you shouldn't be. Let's just cut that out. Step 1. Once that's eliminated, let's go like step 2. You need to maybe prioritize that nothing you're eating is coming out of a box or has more than 5 ingredients or 3 ingredients. It's like, okay, that's easy enough. So you're educating yourself, you're learning a little bit more about nutrition, and you're kind of inching your way forward, keeping consistency. Then maybe it's going to a plate method where, you're prioritizing protein, you're making sure that you've got enough carbs and fats, but maybe you're not measuring yet. Once you kind of get comfortable with that, maybe you go to a measuring system. But jumping from one extreme to the other, more often than not, people just don't stick with it for very long.
I think that's what we saw most. And I think that's also where challenges came into play. And like you led on to, we were talking about, we've done diet challenges. And I don't even like to use the word diet because for us, we always view it as a sustainable lifestyle. And I like for these challenges, when we did the container approach, like what that one really showed people was a visual representation of what they should be eating. And a lot of times, like you think that you're having that protein at your meal, but maybe you don't have any protein in the meal, or you have 5 or 10 grams. And that's really not, getting you all of the benefit that you could be getting if you'd have 20 or 25 or 30 grams of protein at that meal. It's not keeping you satiated. So you're not as full longer. So then you're hungry and then you reach for something quick and then you get that insulin spike and it just becomes the cycle. And so I think what you're saying is absolutely key, is that you have to take small steps. There's a lot of information in the nutrition world, and it's just starting with the base layer and building the foundation. And when we can build the foundation, then we can layer. And so it's just learning, like, what are your non-negotiables? What is reasonable for you? What fits your lifestyle? Because it also has to fit into your lifestyle for you to be able to carry it out on a day-to-day basis.
And the challenges they're almost like I don't want to say a trick, but they can be great for accountability and to teach. The goal is to teach people how to eat. The goal is not like, we hope that you have body change within 6 weeks and you learn something, But more than that, what we want to do is actually just change the way that you look at food, your relationship with it, in a way that you're able to sustain far past that 6 weeks and just becomes part of your routine. And a lot of people want to lose a bunch of weight. And if you do that, more often than not, it ends up being kind of a swing back in the other direction. So sustainability is the biggest portion of kind of what we try to get people to understand.
And oftentimes that comes with reframing. I think when you can go into a challenge, like you're saying, is reframing why you're doing this, reframing why it's important to have protein at your meals. Not that it has to be this big diet thing and you're sacrificing anything, but it's because you have these goals that you want to reach, and it feels so good to reach your goals. And it also feels good to sleep good, and it feels good to feel good, and it feels good to be able to focus during the day. And these are all benefits that come along with putting good, wholesome foods into your body, and come along with eating frequently throughout the day if you're not intermittent fasting, and just come along with having a good, solid approach to nutrition.
Keeping it easy and knowing what you're eating can also just kind of, it should be able to take it off your mind. And for me, more recently, I've gone from just eating whole foods that are healthy. I'm now still eating the same foods, but they have been planned out. So I know what I'm eating every day, and I'm eating the same amount of calories every single day. And I've already gotten leaner. It's taken it off my mind as like, did I eat enough, or did I eat, or I think I forgot lunch. No, I just know I need to eat now or within this window. And it's become something that should make your life less stressful and shrink the time it takes you to actually reach your goals.
So can you help? So maybe somebody wants to look at reshaping or refining their approach. Would you like to use measuring cups, and you kind of have your set meals throughout the day that you try to hit within certain windows? It doesn't have to be perfect because your life is ever changing and things happen, and you might not be able to eat it at that specific time. That's not necessarily what you're talking about. You're not necessarily talking about times. You're kind of just talking about your general structure throughout the day. How would you help, or what tips would you give someone if they kind of want to implement something like this?
I think it would apply to anything, and with, whether it's work or most things that people are trying to achieve. It's very obvious to like have a plan. Like if you want to get somewhere, okay, what's step 1, 2, and 3? But for whatever reason, people just are so resistant to doing that with food. And you need to have a plan. And it doesn't need to be complicated, but like work something out. Whether it's like I'm eating 5 meals a day, I'm eating breakfast, lunch, something middle of the afternoon, and dinner, and a snack. Whatever it is, you need something to be able to track and measure and hold yourself accountable to, that then you can also kind of dial things in. It's like, is this working? I'm headed in the right direction, the wrong direction, and you can make adjustments to it. But you've got to have some sort of knowledge or some sort of foundation that you can build on, and also like have an idea what you're putting in your body, and if it's working or not, working for you or not.
I think the other thing is patience. And I think oftentimes it's not like all of a sudden I started tracking my food daily, and it's not like all of a sudden I got stronger the next day. It was a long-term commitment. And I think we commit in the gym, but oftentimes we forget to commit in the kitchen, and we forget to commit when it comes to our nutrition and our recovery process, and nutrition aids in that recovery process. So whether that's just training to look good and feel good, or whether that's training for that performance, is like we have to commit to those goals, but understanding that it's not going to come instantly. And there will be fluctuations, especially for us as females. My weight, depending on what time of the month it is for me, will fluctuate drastically between 3 and 5 pounds, because sometimes I hold more water. And it's just understanding that, staying the course, that it's not going to be a linear graph. And there will be ups and downs. Stress can affect your appetite. Stress can also just affect how you're feeling. And understanding that those days will come, but that you're just going to continue with this consistent approach, and you're going to continue putting whole, healthy foods into your body, and you're going to continue being patient and working towards that goal, layering brick on brick on brick.
Have your daily plan, but look at it weekly. So like if you had an extra meal tonight, or you had ice cream or whatever, you're not taking that away from tomorrow. You're going back to your meal plan, and you're picking right back where you left off. So we're avoiding kind of the swings one way or another. And that is more so kind of what we're trying to avoid. Like we want measurable. And if, 5 out of 7 days a week, you've done that, it's like you were on the right track. But trying to constantly accommodate for what you did yesterday or what you're going to do tomorrow, it's like, no, you should have a plan that you're following. And if something deviates a little bit, let it go. That was yesterday.
I do agree. And I think let it go, but also I think like get back on track, which is what you're saying. And I think we talked about this in the last episode, is like trying not to have two of those negatives follow each other, especially when it comes to nutrition. But also I think the other common thing that I see happen so often when I talk to people is they are so good Monday morning through Friday at lunch. Then all of a sudden Friday evening happens, Saturday happens, and Sunday happens. And you could look at it as like, well, I'll just count Friday as good. So that's 5 of 7 days, but really that's like a C or a D if you would do the percentage. And like, we wouldn't call that passing, right? And so it's understanding that just because the weekend's here, we don't throw the entire weekend out, because that really can derail your goals. But instead you pick certain meals and balance certain things with friends and family or whatever those are for you, that's the time that maybe you can let loose a little bit, but we're not just completely derailing, right? You're still picking, hopefully, an option that has protein and veggies. You're still choosing to skip super sugary beverages or things that aren't going to make you feel good the next day, that are going to affect your sleep. And it's like you're still making better decisions, but yeah, you can kind of, have a little bit of balance in your life.
Yeah, balance is great. But I think the more momentum that you build and the more that you can recognize like it's working, the more appealing it is to stick with kind of your meal plan or whatever your foundation is. It's the same thing for the gym. If you're going to the gym 5 or 6 days a week and you're seeing progress, you're making gains, and whether you're getting stronger, you're putting on muscle, like you don't want to miss the gym. Like you're excited about it because you can feel the momentum and the progress. And when you start losing weight and your body starts changing, it's less appealing to just let the weekend, go off the rails. It's like maybe one meal every now and then, but like I don't want to, because like I'm making progress. Like I don't want to take 2 steps back. Like it feels good.
It does feel good. And that's actually a conversation you and I had the other night, is after the holidays, it's like you do end up eating a little bit more out of the norm, stuff that, and I say you as in we and people in general, it's like you're eating things, you're with friends, you're with family, you're at these gatherings. And it's funny how you enjoy what you're doing, you feel good, you're seeing results, and then you kind of deviate a little bit. And it's like, oh, it's okay. But you deviate again because now there's another holiday, and you deviate again because now you have this other party. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, where did these cravings come from? Like now I just want to go out to eat. Like all of a sudden you start to get used to that going out to eat, and then you kind of forget. And so it's like finding to where you're like your happy medium is in your balance, and where you just feel really good and you like what you're doing and it's enjoyable and it's not a sacrifice, because you're sleeping great, you feel good, your workouts are going good, and you're working towards your goals. And I think that's kind of like the ultimate spot to try to find. And I think that you can do that. It just requires consistency. Consistency
builds momentum, which is what we want. And that can go either direction. It's like when you start going out, maybe you're having a couple drinks and you're not eating that well, like it sounds a little bit more appealing the next day to maybe we'll just go out to eat. And that can snowball in the direction that you're not wanting to go. So habits make momentum, and momentum makes results.
Absolutely. And I think there's 3 things. So if you're in the camp where you're like, I just want to lose a little bit of weight, or maybe I want to maintain, or I just want to make some changes, I think there's 3 ways that are often talked about that you can make changes. And when I heard this, I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the first way is you can eat less, right? So maybe we're in a calorie surplus. We want to lose weight. We can shift ourselves into a calorie deficit. We're eating the same foods, but we are consuming less calories. The second way is going to be restricting our time window, which I'm not as big a fan of, especially for performance. And I'll talk about that, but it does work really, really well for some people. And I think there are certain periods of time that you can do this for a limited time, that you can get really great results and then kind of shift. But that would be intermittent fasting. So you're shortening your window that you're eating. And I think that the shorter the window that you're eating means that you're eating less often throughout the day, which is likely going to lead you to consume less calories in that window. The third way is going to be cleaning up the foods that you eat. For example, if you switch from 85-15 ground beef to a 93-7, you're going to get the same amount of protein with less amount of fat. So it's going to have less amount of calories. You could shift from processed foods or sodas to water. If you take out that Diet Coke or I don't even know I haven't had a soda in, I can't tell you the last time I had a soda. But if you take out some of those processed foods that aren't as good and you shift into a cleaner food that is less processed, it's going to have less calories. And so you can still have a huge volume of food. It's just going to have less calories. So swapping out your French fries for broccoli, steamed broccoli, right? That's going to be a huge swap. And so you're just cleaning up the types of foods you're eating, but you're still eating a good amount of volume of food. And I think those are 3 things that people can look at that you can choose which one is best for me. And if you do that regularly, you will see results.
Yeah, I mean, something that so many people have told us when we've done challenges is when they've cut out all the processed food and they're eating nothing but basically meat, fruit, and vegetables, whole foods, even though they're on what they would consider a diet, some people, it's more common that it's like, I can't eat all this. Like, this is more food, like, I can't eat it all. And that's not what most people think of a diet. But because processed foods are so much more calorie dense, it doesn't take very much of them, or it takes a lot more of them to fill you up, but it's a substantial amount more of calories. So like Kristi's example, broccoli, you can eat a lot of broccoli, like probably more than you want. And you're going to be full. So it's not like eating smarter and being a little bit more strategic doesn't mean that you're starving yourself. But I also think that all three of those are still the same thing, where you are either in a calorie surplus and you're going to be gaining weight, or you're in a calorie deficit and you're going to be losing weight. You can do that 1,000 different ways, but that's what it all boils down to. Some work better than others, whether that's keto or fasting, but the same thing is happening.
So a really great tip, a really great tip for you if you're trying to get in and out of the grocery store is first going to be to make a list. So if you want to clean up the types of foods you're eating, and that's the route that you want to go, that's the route that we like to go to, clean up our eating and help us feel good, is first make a grocery list. So you go into the store and you're like, I'm only buying what's on this list. Because so often we get into the grocery store and then you start going up and down the aisles, and then all of a sudden the Oreos start calling your name and the donuts and all of these things. And it's like, okay, I don't need to go in that aisle. Like if I don't see it, I don't want it. It's not on my list. I'm not going in the aisle. So first, make your list. Second, shop the perimeter of the store, because the perimeter is going to have the fresh food. It's going to have the refrigerated food. It's going to have the things that aren't as processed, that don't have the longer shelf life. And I think if you can stay out of those middle aisles and just kind of go in, have your list, stick to the perimeter, get out of the grocery store, or even order online. I know a lot of people who have started shopping online to prevent them from going into the grocery store from buying all of the crap.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So if we go to the grocery,
Patrick actually fun fact, Patrick did pretty much all of the grocery shopping and all of the cooking when I was training for the games. I feel like I had zero energy to do anything outside of training ever. Well, I guess I should have kept training for the games, because now I'm the one doing all the grocery shopping and the cooking again. But no, it's fun to see kind of how those roles have shifted and changed. But he just supported, and he helped me save so much energy. He took care of me, so I didn't have to think about these things. But it's just interesting to see now, going back into the grocery store when you're shopping and you're like, wow, I hadn't done this for so many years, how you have to kind of get back into that routine and that rhythm.
I'm just trying to think, like if we're going to the grocery store, if we have things in our house that came from the grocery store, I'll put it that way, that weren't from the outside of or that came from the inside of the aisles, it's things like white rice cakes. I'm trying to think if there's even anything else. Maybe
we do oatmeal.
We'll do oatmeal, but that's pretty much it. And we basically all whole foods, but at night, like sometimes a rice cake, it's not candy, but it's something that kind of gives you a little bit of a crunch and is satisfying, and also, fairly healthy. But even if you want a piece of chocolate, you can factor that into your macros or into your diet plan. So that may mean a little bit less of something else, but if that makes you happy and that's something you want to do, whether it's a couple times a week or every day, that's fine. Like you can also make that work.
I think there's two camps of people for sure. And having done challenges, I talk to people about this all the time, is there are the people that are like, it's an all or none. If I'm having the one little piece of chocolate, I'm eating the whole bar. If I'm having one Oreo, I'm eating the entire sleeve of Oreos. So for them, it's like, I don't even want it. I don't want it in my house. I want it challenging to get to. If it's out of sight, it's out of mind, and I'm good. And so I think that's fine. But I could tell you I'm not that person, and that if I restrict, then as soon as I get the text message from my mom that's like, hey, I made cinnamon rolls, I'll be like, be there in 1 minute, knocking on the door like, hi, because I've just been restricting and I'm craving it. So for us, we love to keep a little bit of dark chocolate in the house, where we'll have, a square here and there. And we're not eating the entire bar, but that bite is so satisfying, and it's good. Like we enjoy it, and it curbs any cravings that we have. So we're not eating pints of ice cream, and just, we enjoy it. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. And that's that little bit of balance. So I think it's getting to that point also. And I know there's people that I've worked with where it's like they used to eat the whole sleeve of Oreos, but then when we started to get them dialed in on the amount of protein they were eating and the foods, they started to lessen those cravings, and then they could have that square of chocolate. So I think it's looking at that whole entire approach and just making sure that you're looking at it from all angles.
Kind of the opposite end of that spectrum of not having anything sweet in the house, like it's not here, I won't eat it. The opposite goes for having the right foods in the house, so you will eat them. So one is just having them there and available. And two, we're huge proponents of pre-cooking or prepping food in advance to where you don't get starving. And then it's like, what's in here that I can eat? It's no, there's, ground turkey, there's ground beef, there's chopped up fruit, there's pre-cooked rice, sweet potatoes. You can go right to the fridge and make a good choice in that time where maybe you're a little bit more vulnerable or could be more like predisposed to making a bad decision when you are just starving. It's like, make it easy to make the right decisions.
The first thing that we do when we come home from the grocery store is we wash the fruit, we cut the fruit, we start washing the potatoes, we cut the potatoes, we start the different kinds of meats, right? So we have all of this prepped and ready in our fridges. And it's like anything else I think that I've learned is schedule it in. I have grocery store scheduled in to our time, right? We know what day we do this. Then within that shopping, you also have meal prep scheduled in. Make time for it. Account for the time that it's going to take you, because then once it's done, it's going to save you so much time during the week. And it's also going to save you from driving through Wendy's, Chipotle, McDonald's, any of those places that, yes, if you're in a bind and you have to go through, fine. But just because maybe we didn't have something prepared that we could have eaten, that's why we're there. And I think for us, that's just made a huge difference. And a lot of people I talk to is that if you can just have those prepared foods, it takes time up front, but it saves you so much time and it helps you keep on track later throughout the week.
And for most people, they need something that's easy.
Easy and simple. And I think the saying failing prepare is preparing to fail. I think that really, really, really plays into nutrition, because when you are starving and there are no options, you aren't going to wait 40 minutes or for your pork tenderloin to roast in the oven, right? You want something now. You are hungry. You only have so much time. And that's where that meal prep comes into play. I like to use the 3 per, and this is how we grocery shop for anyone who's like, oh, but like we eat the same foods, but we look at foods as, kind of protein, carbs, and fats, and try to build and try to build balanced meals. And so we'll go 3 proteins. So Patrick listed off a few of the ones that we like. We like bison. We like ground turkey. We like ground chicken. We like salmon or halibut. And so we'll pick 3 per week and we'll kind of rotate those throughout the day. Then same with the vegetables. We like asparagus, we like peppers, we like spinach. You'll pick 3 of those and get those at the grocery store so that you're not just having peppers for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but you can throw in some spinach into an omelet, or you can have some peppers with your rice and your chicken and make kind of like a little bowl for dinner. And so understanding that you can swap in and out those vegetables, that can really help make really, really small changes when it comes to the total calories, but they just give it a little different flavor profile. So I think having those 3 per list, and when we go to the grocery store, we think about that, is what are 3 fruits that we can have this week? Maybe we're going to go strawberries, blueberries, and bananas. Maybe the next week we're going to sub in some apples in place of that banana, and just kind of keep it fresh that way. So it is eating pretty much the same foods, but also having just a slight bit of variety, so you don't just feel like chicken, rice, and broccoli at every single meal.
Maybe we'll even do an entire video on this, but I'll just kind of go through what I eat in a day really quick, show you kind of how easy it is, how simple, and how much I don't even have to think about it because I can just rattle it off right here. So the first thing I eat in the morning is going to be oats and protein. I can make an entire week's worth in about 5 minutes. So it's a scoop of oats, a scoop of protein, a little bit of chia seeds, put some water, sometimes maybe a little almond milk in there, throw them all in the fridge. First thing in the morning, I'll eat the water, or I'll drink some water. I'll eat my oats. Then I'll drink some coffee. A couple hours later, I'll do 1 egg, half a cup of egg whites, half a cup of beef, half a cup of sweet potatoes, a little bit of fruit. In between that meal and lunch, I'll have an apple and a banana. For lunch, I'll have a full cup of rice, full cup of ground turkey.
And with that, usually you do your workout, you usually have that apple and banana as kind of pre-workout carb. And then you usually put your rice and your protein after your workout for recovery.
Yes.
So your workout usually sits in there, and that's why you put those 2 right there.
Yep. And prior to dinner, I like something crunchy. It's satisfying for me. So I will eat 12, what are the name of those? Donkey chips.
Basically 1 serving.
Basically 1 serving. So 12 is a serving. I'll eat 12 of those with a little bit of hummus and hot sauce. It's super satisfying, gives me a little bit of a crunch. It's factored into my calories throughout the day. Then for dinner, I'll eat either a cup of beef, a steak, a piece of fish, a full cup of either sweet potatoes or about a half a cup or one serving of like golden potatoes. And we'll do a salad with fruit on it. Last thing before bed, basically it's ice cream. So it's protein, ice, and a splash of almond milk blended up in a blender. It's basically ice cream and it's satisfying.
Most people everyone I tell that we call that ice cream is like, you guys are crazy. That is not ice cream. Ice cream is Graters or Cold Stone Creamery. But to us, like, it tastes delicious. It's cold and it satisfies and we sleep great at night. And so I think it's finding what works for you. And we like to view it as ice cream. So we're going to keep viewing it as ice cream because that's our little satisfying thing that we like to eat at night. I think some of you guys are probably surprised at how often throughout the day that Patrick eats. And this is definitely something that we've learned is having one major goal for everybody listening. You guys should be aiming to hit 1 gram of pound of protein per body weight. If you are looking at maintaining, if you want to build muscle, even if you're cutting, we don't want to cut our protein. We want to keep our muscle mass. So just understanding that those meals are built around protein. So you heard him listing protein pretty much at every single meal except for those apple and banana. And so that's just going to give him these constant boosts of protein throughout the day to keep his muscles, to keep his body anabolic instead of catabolic. So he's not breaking down that muscle.
I think something that we get a question about a lot is that pound of, or is that gram of protein per pound of body weight, is that off what you weigh? And it's like, it should be off what you want to weigh.
Your goal.
Off your goal weight. So if you're looking to lose weight, if you're 200 pounds and you want to be 190, you're going to be eating 1 gram per pound of the 190 number. If you're looking to gain weight, the same thing's going to apply.
That's one thing, if you're listening, that I would highly, that's the first change to make. I think a lot of people, when they increase their protein intake, one, you burn more calories because of the thermic effect of food, but two, you're going to feel satiated and fuller longer. So that, when we were talking about small changes, let's start with that one. That is the best change to start with if you're not sure about what your protein intake is. The second thing is going to be, wow, how do I get all of that protein in throughout the day? I would say Patrick talked about his first meal. It has protein with oats. I'm the same. I do protein with oats. And you want to get a minimum of 20 to 30 grams of protein per day. I've even heard upwards of a third of your protein goal in that first couple hours of the day. And that's going to really set the stage and set the tone for how you're going to feel throughout the day, feeling full and satiated, so that you're not having these cravings and you're not just, pulling through McDonald's because all of a sudden you're starving. And so we want to keep ourselves stable throughout the day and not experience all of these peaks and valleys where all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I have no energy. I just need to go eat everything I can find. And now anything looks good. I'm going to eat the entire chocolate bar when typically I want one square. So understanding like how important protein really is for one, feeling full and satiated, but two, to help us achieve our goals. And
we really like the oats, and we're always trying to kind of not encourage, but we try to discourage people from starting the morning with a protein shake. So it's like you hear like, oh, I should have 30 grams of protein to start the day. That's probably about what a scoop of protein is for most protein manufacturers, but that's not going to be satiating, and it's not going to be satisfying, and it's not going to last you very long. So if you can mix that with the oats, you've actually got something in your stomach that, one's probably going to slow the coffee absorption down. Two, it's going to actually last a little bit longer for you, so you're not starving in 15 minutes. I'm so glad you hit on the coffee absorption. So I don't think we've talked about that yet. I think a lot of people's first reactions, wake up, drink a cup of coffee, and call that breakfast. That is not a good breakfast. And I'm going to say that's not a good breakfast. That's my personal opinion, but you will feel so much more stable. You won't have those jittery feelings if you can get something in your stomach. It's the first thing you do when you wake up is what we would suggest, and what we've seen work for so many people is going to be adding that protein in, like you just talked about, having a glass of water and then having your coffee. Both of us used to do it the other way, and we've seen drastic benefits from switching that. Yeah, I would much prefer to mainline some coffee first thing, and that's historically what I've been, I've done more often. But it really makes a huge difference to have I'll have a 32 ounces of water, then I'll eat the oats, and then I try to even postpone coffee even a little bit past that, and it makes a really big difference. It's coming from somebody who loves caffeine and likes a lot of it. I feel like when I met you, you drank so much coffee and so much caffeine. It's crazy to just see. We both were. In swimming, I was just having coffee and an apple for breakfast when I'd get done swimming. And it's like, how is that a breakfast? Like, what? And so it's like, I wonder why, I would experience those ups and downs. And it's just, I enjoyed coffee. Like I didn't until I start reading and learning, which I've done for the past, 15, 20 years. It's like, wow, this makes a huge difference. Like,
what was I thinking? And I think it's okay to look back on your journey and recognize how far you've come, how much you've evolved, and how much you've learned over the years.
Kind of coming full circle. I think that like, that's funny that was breakfast, but the body's also just, it is really resilient. And I'm sure like you guys have probably seen the people who like don't drink water, like they literally just drink soda. In the way that you said you hadn't drank soda in 15 years, there's people who've been like, I haven't had just a glass of water in 15 years. And I think it's wild that the body can even just sustain that, but it is resilient. Like people can get away with it, but the goal is not to get away with it. Like you can have an apple and a coffee for breakfast, but it's not ideal. Maybe it works for some people, but the goal is to thrive, not just like get by. And we can make smarter decisions, and it doesn't have to be that hard.
We are all about thriving and not surviving. And I think that it's just one of those things that sometimes you don't understand what it feels like to feel good until you start making small changes. And then you get that wind in your sails and you start to really like, wow, I can't believe I was doing it this way. Like I had no idea. And I think that's also just understanding that we all make mistakes and that we have to learn. And the other thing is nutrition and what works for you is going to be different than what works for somebody else. So nutrition is a very individualized thing, and it takes time, it takes patience, and it's trial and error. And so you can't change a million things at once. And we talk about this often. You have to make small changes. Pick one thing to change, stick with it for, 7 days. Ask yourself, do I feel any different? Am I noticing anything? And then continue kind of trialing and erring. If you're feeling good, keep that, and then maybe you make another change. But what we don't want to do is all of a sudden remove milk or lactose, remove gluten, remove everything. And then we have no idea what actually worked and what didn't work.
I've had this talk 1,000 times, and it either happens at like New Year's when people want to make a big change, or it happens when people are kind of just coming to the gym for the first time and they want to come 7 days a week. They want to change their diet. They want to know everything, and they want to make the changes now. And as great as it is to have that excitement, if you change too many variables at once, you're not going to know what's working and what's not. So it's like, now I just kind of have to do all of it, even if you are making progress. So it's like, change a couple things at a time. Is it working? Yes or no? Like if something's not working, let's get rid of it and try something different. If it is working, keep it going. But if you're just changing everything from the start, it's like, it's hard to measure and track the things that are actually helping and things you're doing that aren't helping.
And it's also just not going to be sustainable. It's going to be extremely overwhelming trying to just overhaul your entire life on the flip of a coin. And I think that's the other piece is like, whether we're doing these challenges that we talked about, whether we're fine tuning the way we eat, whatever foods we're choosing, like we want it to be sustainable and enjoyable. We only get one life. We should enjoy our life, and we should strive to feel our best, which you were talking about. We want to thrive. And that's ultimately why we run challenges and why we try to, help jumpstart people and help give them the tools and help teach them the habits. And a lot of times we'll start with 3 really, really basic things. So we might start with protein, which we already talked about, having a protein goal for your day, because ideally we're putting protein in throughout the day, but really ultimately we want to make sure we're hitting it at the end of the day as the lowest hanging fruit. The second thing is going to be water, making sure that we are hydrating, because a lot of times we might think that we're hungry, but we're actually thirsty. And this happens to me a lot. It's like, I'm bored, I'm working from home, the kitchen's 8 steps to my right, and I say bored, I'm working, but you get what I'm saying. It's like you're at home and the kitchen's 8 steps to your right. And it's like, maybe I'm just thirsty. Have I had any water today? And then I go start snacking. It's like, I wasn't even hungry. I should have just had a glass of water and I would have been satisfied. So understanding how we can interpret those signs as well is like, just kind of check yourself, like, have I hydrated? So having a hydration and a protein goal are really great. And then having a general step goal. So we get ourselves up out of our seats and we're moving, because a lot of times we're hitting the workouts. That's not the problem. It's the other things that we're working on. So we like to start with 3 simple things that you can integrate into your daily life that aren't going to add too much stress. And then from there, we can layer on, okay, how much protein am I having for breakfast? And kind of layering in all these other things, trying to structure your meals. Okay, am I going to have my banana around my workout so I get that really good quick energy to help me feel energized during my workout? And then you can start playing with those things a little bit more, but you don't need to start with that. You just need to start with the basics.
Yeah, basically every challenge that we run, steps and protein will be a part of it. And as boring and like not like sexy as those things are, they're such big needle movers that we will almost always include those. And sometimes people just need the accountability to be like, okay, I'm going to make the effort to get my steps in, or to actually track my protein. But the goal is to build momentum. And then throughout any given challenge, our goal is to educate and teach you to where you can continue these things past the challenge. So we hope you lose weight. We hope you make a body transformation in a 6 week or 8 week, whatever the challenge is. But more than that, we want to teach and educate you guys to where you can continue making progress well past the challenge is over, and it turns into more of a lifestyle.
A lifestyle and a mindset shift. And that's ultimately what we talk about during these challenges. And I love that Patrick said we always incorporate these few things, because for some people, they might do multiple challenges with us. And I've had this conversation with people. The first challenge, they mastered the steps. The protein in the water, they were a little bit inconsistent. They got it here and there, but they mastered the steps. That's a huge win in itself, and you celebrate small victories. Then maybe a year later, 6 months later, they were like, okay, I'm going to do this again. They've still mastered their steps, so they still have that. So this time they now have the bandwidth, and now they've mastered the protein. They're not as inconsistent. They've got it down. So now they've got 2 of those things. And now what's happening is they are layering brick by brick. And they've told me this is just becoming my lifestyle now. It's not a challenge. It's something that has stuck with me, that is a part of who I am. It's a non-negotiable for me. And so I think it's okay to understand that you might not get all of it the first time, but whatever we do get puts us one step forward from where we were.
And sometimes all it takes is a reminder. So you open your app and you get the reminder to get your steps in. And it's like, oh yeah, I know I need to do that. And it puts it back on your radar. And sometimes that's all it takes. It's just a little reminder.
And speaking of challenges, we're actually going to kick off our challenge. We're doing it a little bit later intentionally. We're going to kick ours off February 10th. So if you guys want to learn more about nutrition, you want to dial in your habits, you want to maybe master your steps, master your protein, and then, get this other information that we slowly start to think about. Maybe we're not perfect with it every single day, but it's setting the stage. It's setting the stage for this lifestyle that we're working to build, a sustainable lifestyle where we feel good and we can stick with what we're doing and we enjoy what we're doing. So if that is of interest to you, we'd love to have you guys join us and check it out. We'll be kicking that off February 10th on the IBEX Training app. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. We're really excited about it. We've not only seen tremendous results, but we've seen life-changing things happen during these challenges where it's just like these aha moments for people. So we're super excited about that. And I think above all else, like within this conversation, I think it's important to recognize that, first of all, like circling back to the start, if you get anything from this, I want you to ask yourself, like, what is your goal? That should be your first question. What is that goal? Is it performance? Is it aesthetics? Is it to feel good? Start there. Then start with the lowest hanging fruit. Small changes really add up. It doesn't need to be a big overhaul. So we hope you guys have enjoyed this podcast. If you want us to dive further into nutrition, if you want us to dive further into any of the other topics that we've talked about, please comment below, let us know. We'd love to see those comments. We'd love to know if any of this resonated with you. And please share. Do you say subscribe on a podcast?
Yeah. Follow, share,
subscribe, and most importantly, have a great day. Thank you so much for hitting play. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for tuning in.